I'll make a video explaining this homework, 6.2 WSPM. I'll go through the odd ones first, and then I'll do a second video on the even ones. So on number one, step one on the substitution is to pick the equation and pick an equation and solve for a variable. So step one's already done for us. If you pick the top equation, it already has y by itself, and it says y equals 4x. The next step on substitution is to take that variable expression 4x and plug it into the equation you have not used, and you're going to plug it into the y because it says y equals, right? It says y equals that stuff, so you plug in that stuff into y. If it said x equals, you plug it into x. But anyways, we're plugging into y. We're going to end up with x plus y, but instead of y, I'm putting parentheses and I'm plugging in the 4x, and it's going to equal 5. So again, I'm plugging in 4x right into those parentheses. Now, after that, you're supposed to try to do distributive property, then combining like terms. But the bottom line is you're simplifying and then solving. So there is nothing to distribute into those parentheses. So we're just going to simply rewrite it as x plus 4x equaling 5, which means 5x equals 5. And when you solve that, you divide by 5, which means x equals 1. And that is one answer. To find the other, you simply plug it back into any equation you want. I'm going to use the top equation. The top equation reads y equals 4x. So I'm going to rewrite that. Y equals 4x. But instead of x, obviously I'm plugging in a 1 right in there. So what does y equal? Y equals 4. So we have the x answer, we have the y answer, and that is the answer that you should see on the back side of number 1. So the ordered pair for number 1 is 1, 4. If you were to graph it, both lines would intersect at the coordinate 1, 4. Okay. Let's move on to number 3 here. I want to zoom in a lot so I could have plenty of space. So step 1, pick an equation and solve for a variable. Obviously, you don't want to pick the bottom one because you have to do a lot of work. The top one, it already has y by itself. So the top one technically has step 1 done for you. So we're picking the top one. We already have y by itself. Let's get that variable expression plugged into the equation we have not used. So 3x is going to go right into the y of the second equation. So my new bottom equation is going to be 2x plus y equals 15. And inside that parenthesis, I'm going to plug in the 3x that we're substituting. And again, it's just a regular one variable equation now. So now we could just focus in on that 2x plus 3x equals 15, and we could simplify it and solve it. There is no distributive property, but 2x plus 3x is 5x. And of course, we have it equal to 15, which means that when we divide by 5 and divide by 5, we will get x equaling 3. Now that is one answer. We need the other. Once we have the x, all we need to do is plug it back into any of the original equations to find the y. The easiest equation to pick is the top one. Let me rewrite it. Instead of y equals 3x, I'm going to put y equals 3 parentheses. That way I could plug in a 3 for x. So what's y going to equal? Y is going to equal 9. 3 times 3 is 9. So the answer to number 3 is 3 for x, 9 for y. So 3, 9 is the ordered pair solution for number 3. If you were to graph them, they would intersect at that coordinate. Number 5, it also has step 1 done for us. The top equation already has y by itself. So I'm going to take that algebraic expression and I'm going to plug it into the other equation into the y. Why am I plugging it into the y? Because it says y equals that stuff. If it would say x equals some stuff, I'd plug in that stuff into x. But it says y equals, that's why I'm plugging it into the y. So again, that bottom equation, I'm going to rewrite it, x plus, but instead of y, I'm going to plug in the x minus 1 above, and it's still equal to 3, right? Now again, we're able to focus in on this simple equation and solve it. There is no distributive property. You don't even need those parentheses. You could be rewritten as just x plus x minus 1 equals 3. And of course, x plus x is 2x minus 1 equals 3. I'd have to get that x by itself now. So I would add 1 to both sides. I'd end up with 2x equaling 4. So that canceled. 2x equals 4. We need to get rid of the 2, so we divide by 2, which means x equals 2. So that is one answer. We still need the other, so let's plug in the x value of 2 either here or here, any equation you want. Obviously, the top equation is easier. I could do it in my head, but I'm going to show my work. The top equation, y equals x minus 1. I'm plugging in this x value of 2 right in there. So what is 2 minus 1? Y is going to equal 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. So there's my second answer. Written as a coordinate, the solution will be 2, 1. Moving on to number 7. Number 7, both of them have the y by itself. So you could either plug in the top expression into the bottom equation or the bottom into the top, whatever you'd like. Yes, they are in y equals mx plus b form, but I'm not even going to mess with that because I do not have graph paper. Okay? So what I'm going to do is take the bottom equation this time, y equals 2x minus 5, and I'm going to take that 2x minus 5 and plug it right here in for y because it says y equals. So when I plug it in for y, it's going to read 2x minus 5 equals the 4x minus 1. Again, I took this and plugged it into this side of this equation. So that's how I get 2x minus 5 equals 4x minus 1. And now I could actually solve this equation. I need to get x by itself on one side, so I'm going to subtract 4x. I'm going to subtract 4x. I will have a new equation that reads negative 2x minus 5 equals negative 1. Then I get rid of the minus 5 by doing plus 5 and plus 5, and I'll end up with negative 2x equaling 4. I need to solve that. I need to get rid of the negative 2 that's being multiplied by x. So I'm going to divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, and I will get x equals negative 2. And that is one answer, but we still need the other answer, so we'd plug that in either to the top or the bottom. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to plug it into the top. So on top, I'll have y equals 4x minus 1. Instead of 4x, I'm going to put 4 times negative 2 minus 1. And when I do this math, 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Bring down the minus, bring down the 1. We have y equaling negative 8 minus 1. So that means y equals negative 9. So the answer to number 7, as a coordinate, the answer you'll see on the back side of this worksheet is negative 2, negative 9. Let's move on to number 9. Again, step 1 is to pick an equation and get a letter by itself. Well, the bottom equation already has it by itself. So we're going to have to pick that. Well, we don't have to, but it's easiest to pick that bottom equation and substitute that variable expression into the other equation. So we're going to take that 3 minus x and plug it into the y value of the equation we have not used. So I'm going to rewrite my top equation right here on the side. It's going to read 2x minus 3 times equals 21. Now the y is 3 minus x, so I'm going to plug in a 3 minus x right into that parenthesis. Now we're able to take this equation and solve for x. Now it doesn't matter if you write negative x plus 3 or 3 minus x. We're still going to have to distribute and combine like terms. Negative 3 times 3, that's negative 9. Negative 3 times negative x is a positive 3x. We still have a 2x right in front. Now we're going to combine the 2x with the 3x. And 2x plus 3x is 5x's minus 9 equaling 21. After that, I need to get x by itself, so I'm going to get rid of that minus 9 by going plus 9 and plus 9. So I will have 5x equaling 30, which means that when I divide by 5 to get rid of the multiplication of 5, I'll get x equals 6. That is one answer, and we need to find the other answer by plugging that answer back into any original equation. So the bottom equation is probably best. The bottom equation reads y equals 3 minus x, but of course I'm plugging in this 6 in place of x. So we really have y equals 3 minus 6. 3 minus 6 is negative 3. So y really does equal negative 3. So your coordinate solution for number 9, the answer you see in the back of the worksheet is 6 for x, negative 3 for y. Let me move on to number 11 here. Now, okay, so on number 11, this is the very first system that doesn't have step 1 done for you. You want to get a variable by itself. So you have to pick an equation and get a variable by itself. The top equation is the better one to pick because x is easy to get by itself. So if you take that top equation, x plus 2y equals 13, and get that x by itself by subtracting 2y and subtracting 2y, you're going to have a new equation that reads x equals negative 2y plus 13. So this is step 1 right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to plug in that variable expression, negative 2y plus 13. We're going to plug it into the equation we have not used. So we have not used the bottom equation, so we're plugging it into the bottom equation on the x position. So why am I plugging it into the x? We're plugging it into the x position because it says x equals. If it would say y equals, I'd be plugging it into the y. But anyways, let's draw some arrows here. My new equation will read 3x, but instead of x, we're plugging in that negative 2y plus 13 minus 5y equals 6. So now we're able to zoom in on this single variable equation. We need to simplify it. We need to simplify it by distributing that 3. 3 times negative 2y, that's negative 6y. 3 times 13, that is positive 39. Let me bring down the minus 5y. So I've distributed. After distributing, you need to combine like terms. So negative 6y and negative 5y, that is negative 11y. We still have the plus 39, we still have the equal sign, and we still have a 6. I almost have y by itself. I'm 2 steps away. Let's get rid of that minus or plus 39 by subtracting 39. Subtract 39. And when we subtract 39 from 6, that'll be equals 6 take away 39, that's negative 33. And on the left side, this canceled out, and we have negative 11y left over, so bring down the negative 11y. Now that really says negative 11 times y equals negative 33, which means if I divide by negative 11, let me get some more space up here. If I divide by negative 11 on both sides, I will have y equaling a positive 3. Now that's half of our answer. We have one value. We still need the other. We still need the x value. So I could plug it in either to the top equation or to the bottom equation. I'm going to plug in 3 into the top equation. I'm going to plug in 3 right in here. And it is difficult. We do run out of space. You might want to do this in your notebook or on a separate sheet of paper. So if I plug in a 3 into the top equation, it will read x plus 2y, but instead of y, we're plugging in a 3 right there, equals 13. So 2 times 3, that is 6. So I'll really have x plus 6 equals 13. And when I subtract 6 on both, I'll end up with x equaling 7. So x equals 7. So your answer that you're going to see on the back side of this worksheet on number 11 is 7 is x, so 7 comma 3. That's your answer, the point of intersection if you were to graph it. Moving on to number 13. So guys, if I asked you to pick an equation and solve for a variable, which equation would you pick, the top one or the bottom one?
The top one.
The top one, because it's pretty easy to get the y by itself. You'd first subtract 3x, rewrite it. You're going to have negative y equals negative 3x with a positive 4, but you still need to get rid of that negative in front of the y, so you'd have to multiply everything by negative 1. So if you multiply everything by negative 1, you'll get y equaling positive 3x minus 4. Change all the signs. That was step 1, picking an equation and getting y by itself, or x, depends on what you choose to do. So the next step is to substitute this variable expression, 3x minus 4, into the equation you have not used. So you're going to plug it in to the bottom equation into the y position. because it does say, after all, y equals that stuff, so you plug it into y. If I would have solved for x and it would say x, I'd be plugging it into x. But it says y equals, so I plug it into y. So my new equation on the bottom will read 2x minus 3 times y equals -9. And inside the parentheses, I'm going to be plugging in the 3x minus 4 that we have there. So let's solve this problem by distributing. I'm going to distribute the minus 3. Minus 3 times minus 3x, that's -9x. Minus 3 times -4, that's a positive 12. We still have the equal sign, the -9, and we still have a 2x out here in front. Out of those terms on the left side of the equal sign, I could combine like terms, the 2x with the -9x. That will give me, let me rewrite my equation up here, 2 take away 9, that's a -7, but we're talking about x's. We still have the plus 12. We still have the equals -9. I still need to get the x by itself, so I'm going to subtract 12. Cancels, subtract 12. So when I do -9, take away 12, I will have a new equation. -7x is left over on the left side equals -21 on the right side. My final step will be to divide by -7, divide by -7, and x will equal +3. So that is one answer. I still need the other answer. I do that by plugging it back into any original equation and solving for y. So I'm going to plug it into the top equation. The top equation reads 3x minus y equals 4. But instead of x, let me erase that x, put a parenthesis right there, and let me plug in the x value of 3 that we just solved for. So we really have 3 times 3, which is 9. 9 minus y equals 4. Let's get rid of that 9 by subtracting 9 and subtracting 9. I will have a new equation that reads -y equals -5. The negatives on both sides, you'd have to multiply everything by -1. That way it becomes a positive y equaling a +5. So the answer that you see on the back for number 13 should be the x value of +3, the y value of +5. So +3, +5 is the solution for number 13. I apologize, this is a long video. Number 15, I want to pick an equation and get a variable by itself. I'm going to pick the top equation and I'm going to get x by itself. How do I do that? By simply adding 5y to both sides. So when I do that, my new top equation, since I'm running out of space here, I'm going to write to the side. My top equation will read x equals 10 plus 5y, but I'm going to write it as 5y plus 10. That's my new top equation, right? I added 5y, it's 5y plus 10. Now, the second step is to plug in that algebraic expression into the equation you have not used. And because it says x equals 5y plus 10, I'm going to plug in to the x position. So my new bottom equation will read 2 parenthesis, and let me make that parenthesis a little bit bigger. I'm plugging the 5y plus 10, and then I still have the minus 10y equals 20. Now I have a single variable equation that I could solve for. So 2 times 5y is 10y, 2 times 10 is positive 20. I'm going to bring down the minus 10y, bring down the equal sign, bring down the 20. On the left side, 10y, take away 10y, that cancels out, and I end up with 20 equals 20. Now this is one of those rare cases. Does 20 equal 20? Yes. 20 always equals 20. So it's not no solution, it's actually IMS, infinitely many solutions. So IMS, infinitely many solutions. That is your answer. Number 17, we're going to pick an equation, solve for a variable. So 17, step 1 is to pick an equation and get a variable by itself. So picking the bottom equation is the best one and get x by itself, because that could be done with one step. Plus 3y, that'll cancel out, plus 3y. Your new equation will read x equals 3y minus 3. So now that you have x by itself, you could take that variable expression that x equals and plug it into the equation you have not used, which is the top one, and you're plugging it into the x because it says x equals. So over here on the side, you're going to have 2 times the 3y minus 3. And then we're going to have the plus 5y equaling 38. So I could now focus in on this single variable equation and solve. 2 times 3y, that's 6y. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Bring down the plus 5y. Out of those 3 terms, you could combine the 6y with the 5y, and you will get 11 of those y's. Let's rewrite the minus 6, bring down the equal sign and the 38, and let's solve this thing. I need to get rid of that minus 6 by doing the opposite, plus 6. What you do to one side, you do to the other side, plus 6. You will have 11y equaling 44. And you divide by 11, you will have your final answer of y equaling 4. Now you have one answer, you still need the other. So let's take that y value of 4 and plug it back into the original equations, or one of them. I want to plug it into the bottom one. So when I plug in, I might as well rewrite. So the bottom equation reads x minus 3y, but instead of y, let's put parentheses, and then equals negative 3. That's the bottom equation right there. X minus 3y equals negative 3. X minus 3y equals negative 3. We're going to take the y value of 4, plug it right in there. So there's a 4 right there. My new equation reads x minus 12 equals negative 3. To get rid of that minus 12, I'm going to do the opposite. Plus 12, x will equal 9. So my final answer for number 17 in ordered pair format would be a 9 for the x, comma 4 for the y. Last question on the odd ones explained here. Which equation would be good to pick to get a variable by itself? The top equation or the bottom? Bottom would be better. If you pick the bottom equation and solve for x, you could do that by simply adding 2y here and adding 2y over here. You're going to have x equals 2y minus 1. So now that you know that x equals this stuff, you could take that stuff and plug it into x on the other equation. So when you plug it into the other equation, you're going to end up with a new equation, 2, parenthesis, we're plugging in a 2y minus 1 right in there. And then we have a plus 2y equaling 7. Now we could focus in on the single variable equation. We're going to distribute first. 2 times 2 is 4 with the y. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Bring down the plus 2y. Combine like terms. We have a 4y plus 2y. That is 6y's. Minus 2, bring down the equal, bring down the 7. If you want to get rid of that minus 2, you're going to go plus 2 to both sides. You're going to end up with 6y equaling 7 plus 2 is 9. And for your final step, you would have to get rid of that 6. So we're going to divide both sides by 6. And you will get y equals 9 divided by 6 you cannot do. So what does that mean? That means that you have a fraction as an answer. And 9 over 6 you could reduce by 3, and you'll get the answer 3 over 2. So you actually have an answer that's a fraction. So if you have one answer that's a fraction, it's okay that it's a fraction. You need to plug it into any of the original equations to find the other answer, which is x. So I'm going to plug it into the bottom equation. The bottom equation reads x minus 2 times y, but remember y is 3/2. You could put it in parentheses if you want, equals negative 1. When you multiply a fraction by its denominator, that cancels out. So the 2 and the 2 cancel out. So what we really have is x minus 3 equals negative 1. To get rid of that minus 3, you're going to go plus 3 and plus 3. So your final answer is x equals 2. So the ordered pair that you're going to see on the back side of your worksheet, which has the answers, will be the ordered pair 2 for x, 3 halves for y. Or you could say 2 and 1.5. Or you could say 2 and 1 and 1 half. It's up to you. I believe they put 2 and 3 halves as the answer for x and y. That concludes my video for the odd explanations, or the odd questions explained. In the future, I'll do a video explaining all the even ones.